teachers to our pre-service teachers to deliver explicit instruction, but we need to be using it ourselves in our own college instruction. So Anita Archer, take it away.
Thank you so much. And that really is, you've already given the theme for this presentation, is that if we are teaching the science of reading or any other curriculum to children, we need to utilize the best pedagogy, the best instructional knowledge we have, so that we have the best outcomes. But that also means that we're going to have to use the best pedagogy with our own students, our own undergraduates, our graduate students, our master's students, so that we are constant models of the kind of instruction that we need to see happening in elementary, middle school, and high school settings. So this is on explicit instruction, and I am very honored to be with you. Now, we're going to try at the very end, whenever that might be, to have questions. So if you want to put a question in the chat box, I'll have Larissa and I will have Stephanie watch the chat box. So let me just get this moving forward. This is related to the book that I wrote with Charles Hughes on explicit instruction. And I know some of you use it in your coursework already, and we are honored by that usage. So are you going to participate? Well, yes, you are. I could not teach something on explicit instruction without asking you to participate. Now, all of you have closed your cameras except for Larissa and for Stephanie, and you're going to be muted, but that doesn't mean you can't participate. And so first, sometimes I'm going to ask questions and I will ask you to say the answer wherever you are. Maybe you're in your office, professors. Maybe you are at home. Just tell your family that you're participating and say the answer. Sometimes we would use in our classes when they were present, certainly we would use structured partners. It's one of the best ways across the grades, including at universities, to extend critical thinking, to extend the opportunities to respond. But you're going to have to pretend. Yes, you are, because you don't have a partner sitting right there. You can even name your partner. Maybe James is your partner. And when I say one, say the answer, you say the answer to James out loud, though, so that you are with us. And sometimes you're going to read, but you'll choral reading. And just on Monday, I was asked by a teacher, why would you do choral reading if you were teaching in an elementary school? And I said, how many students do you have in your class? And she said, 20. I said, okay, so let's say you ask a question of each of your students. How many responses would they make? She said, one. And if you had questions where the answers were short and the same, and we said it together, how many responses would they make? 20? Yes. So we can see for choral responses why we might use them, but it's the same thing here in terms of reading. If the more you read, the better you get. Instead of reading 1/20th of it, you are reading all of it. It makes a difference. So we need to give explanations. It appears that how to do it is important, but why you might do it increases motivation to do it. So, and sometimes I'm going to have you read, I'm going to stop, and you're going to say the next word. And we did just an informal survey in classes to see what we might do, particularly with middle school children, to keep them on task. And we tried silent reading. There was a lot of silent reader fakers. We tried choral reading, which was better. We tried partner reading, which was better in terms of on-task behavior. But then we also did close reading. I read stop and you say the next word. And we really significantly increased on-task behavior. So we are going to do that. Now, sometimes you're going to have holdups. And if I was looking at all of your cameras open, I would see your hands go up for agree or disagree, or for, oh, I think number 3 is the best answer. So one of the things I want us to remember, because you also do webinars, so even though we don't always add active participation, we should, because we need to constantly model that good instruction is interactive. I say something, you say something, I write something, you write something. So be sure you're talking out loud, be sure you're writing as we might need it. And this is a quote that just reminds us, I think, of the moral obligation we have as trainers of teachers. And all of you remember our good friend, Dr. Reed Lyon, from his work during Reading First. And so he sort of came back into this story of reading. And in that session that he did, he said this, and read it with me wherever you are. When you're working on something that's so critical to a life, to a child's life, belief systems don't cut it. Evidence cuts it. Evidence cuts it. And that is the movement that we are having, both in the science of reading, the science of instruction, the science of learning, is evidence, evidence, evidence. And there's sort of 3 bodies of evidence. One is the, yes, science of reading. And the next one is the science of learning. And the next one is the science of instruction. And we are going to particularly focus on the science of instruction, because that is my area of, for 57 years, this is all I've attended to, is the relationship of teaching to the outcome of learning. But I want to present it sort of in 2 different ways. One is how teachers teach, whether they're elementary or secondary teachers, or general ed or special ed. What do we know about how they should teach? But I'm quite convinced that we might want to look at it also from the point of view of how professors, all of you, teach. Because if we believe that explicit instruction makes a difference for our students, the children that they're going to teach, then we need to model it. And so that is the perspective that we're going to look at this. So what are our objectives? Now, we would teach the actual students, when they are teaching children, that they should have very clear objectives, what we often refer to as deliberate practice or purposeful practice, where they know exactly what they're intending to learn. So I had 2. I'm going to read when I stop. You say the next word, so you can follow the magic cursor. Prepare aspiring teachers to apply the essential elements of explicit, yes, instruction when teaching students. So we want them to apply it. And everywhere we look in the science of reading, it talks about systematic explicit instruction, systematic explicit instruction. And so we want that to be one of our critical outcomes. But the second one is this. When I stop, say the next word. Utilize the essential elements of explicit, yes, instruction when designing and delivering teacher preparation programs. So in the designing of it, as well as in the delivering of it. So now recently I wanted to figure out if there was one better way to convey the objectives to adult audiences or children audiences. And it appeared to me that we have had this all across my career and your career of telling the objective of the lesson. And sometimes we've called it the target. Sometimes we have called it an objective. Sometimes we've called it a behavioral objective. Sometimes we call it a learning intention and success criteria. And I found no comparative studies. It just appears it's helpful if students of all ages know what the intent is in the instruction. And this one's twofold, one for the teachers that we're training to do, and one for us as professors to do. And so this is just a visual to talk about both the aspiring teachers where they're going to teach, as well as the open door to our university programs. And one of the things I'm finding is, as I visit schools, and I just had a month, 2 weeks, and then 2 weeks later in Hawaii. That was right when there was an ice storm in Portland, Oregon. So I was blessed to be there. But I watched more than 70 teachers over that time teach lessons. And I was again reminded how often we are very activity driven, not learning driven. So that often it felt like the goal was to get rid of through this activity, rather than it have it result into learning. So this is just a reminder to us that the outcome of our profession is learning. Whether it is learning powerful routines to teach phonemic awareness or vocabulary, or to improve comprehension, or is powerful information on how to maintain the attention of students through active participation, or whether it is conveying how we could utilize data to make decisions as we teach everyday lessons, as well as use formative assessment. Our goal is learning, learning, and more learning. But I'm committed, and you're committed, to an equation, and that is the strong belief that the quality of teaching directly relates to the learning. And this is what when I was a professor, and now I'm just teaching a little bit of one course, but when I taught at University of Washington, University of Oregon, San Diego State, I wanted all of the teachers to emerge with this understanding that the quality of their teaching that they brought to every lesson, to the classroom, to every strand in every program would be directly related to the learning. And that if the students were not learning, then instead of giving excuses, when I work with school districts, one of the first things I tell them is, I come as a consultant and I do not want to hear any yeah buts. Yeah, but our students are poor. Yeah, but our students speak Spanish. Yeah, but we're next to a federal prison and their parents or fathers or mothers are in prison. Nah, no. That is maybe not as powerful as saying, ooh, looking at my teaching, was what I taught at that moment appropriate? Did they have the background knowledge? Did I have a perky pace? Did I teach it with clarity? Did I give enough practice? That is what I want teachers to look at, because that they can control, the other variables they can't. So, and you know this because you're professors. You know the relationship of teaching. You know that if I have a group of children in front of me, that if I have very clear demonstrations, very clear information, very clear vocabulary routines, that more learning is going to occur. And if I am teaching them and I constantly have them say things and write things and do things, that more learning is going to occur. If I monitor their responses and listen to their responses and look at their papers, and then I give them feedback, more learning occurs. And if I have practice over time, whether it is deliberate practice, which it would be, whether it was spaced practice, whether it was practice that would not just be spaced, but cumulative and have retrieval, more learning would occur. And see, this is one, the one I just mentioned, one I very seldom see in college classes. Did we plan spaced practice of the big ideas so we kept coming back to them to increase the probability they would remember it? Do we have in every session sometime where they have to retrieve information because that's going to lead to more learning? So this is the blessing of our career, that there is this relationship. One part of it, we control the variables. We control the variables in teaching, and we can optimize learning. Of course, we have to constantly watch our students, college students, see if they have the prior knowledge, see if they are learning it, see how we might have to change our teaching. So last summer, every summer I do a week-long course on explicit instruction. And last summer I did one in Portland, second one in Portland, one in Cincinnati. Well, not in Cincinnati, down the road in Ohio. This summer I'm doing one in Hawaii. I'm just so dedicated to Hawaii. And then I am doing one in Alaska and two in Portland and one in Michigan. And so when I was in Ohio, a principal came up to me and said, Anita, okay, we've been here for 5 days. Surely you have a one-page summary of what you've covered. No, I don't, but by tomorrow I will. So this is that one page of the biggest ideas in explicit instruction. Now, he was looking at it from the point of view of his students, not you as professors, but if you look at it, do we prepare by having critical content? Do we sequence it logically? Do we break it down into obtainable pieces? Do we have examples and maybe even non-examples? And then we go to teach. And we have an opening to our lesson. We get people's attention. We go back and review what's necessary for today. We tell them the goal or purpose of our time that we have them in class, which is never enough. And in the body, we have organized, focused lessons. We communicate with clarity. Oh, I'm loving the research on clarity. And do we use routines? And do they know demonstration, guided practice, checking for understanding? Do we have closure? I'll tell you, this is where I look back at my teaching at universities, and I often didn't have closure where I would wrap it up and give them an idea of what we're going to do the next session. And then have practice, deliberate retrieval, space practice, cumulative practice, and deliver it in a way that they're awake, getting many responses, monitoring them, giving them feedback, having a brisk pace. So I kind of like this as a one-page summary of pedagogy, the big ideas about explicit instruction. Okay, so we have two goals. And one goal is explicit instruction in relationship to teaching children and how we might model those same instructional practices in our own classes. Now, when I went to teach at University of Oregon and was surrounded with people that had written excellent books. In fact, I utilized Doug Carnine's book on direct instruction reading. Well, I could only teach that with explicit instruction because it had running through it not just the science of reading, but the science of instruction. So I was blessed to be put in a place where I right away had to combine both, one for the good of children and one for the good of aspiring teachers. Uh, so one, if you look at explicit instruction, first thing that we looked at was content. Do we focus on critical content? Wow, that would have a classroom teacher has to make that decision. I just looked at with these groups that I'm doing in Oregon, looking at their adopted curriculum, core curriculum, and low performing schools, they need to accelerate what they're doing. And so we had to go through and actually prune the curriculum so that they could put their time into the things that made the most difference to accelerate. But we have to do that. Stop and think, is this critical? Will this make a difference for children so much that our teachers need to know it? And so critical content. Now, we are all deeply committed to evidence-based content. Not this using belief took us some wrong places. I remember leaving University of Oregon and going to San Diego State at the time that California adopted whole language. Now, do you realize that that created a little dissonance in my being because it wasn't evidence-based content. It sounded good. It sounded wonderful. They just have big books and all around them and the opportunity to touch the books and take them home in little bags that they would learn to read. And I just knew that was not the truth. And so I had to make other decisions about what I taught. That was actually evidence-based. So one of my archerisms is teach the stuff and cut the fluff. It speaks to teachers and it speaks to professors. So I'm certain that you've picked out a science of reading format that you're using because we had states. California has adopted that. Montana has. Alabama and Mississippi, both of them have. Kansas, Ohio, Australia. I just chose this one to put here by Kim St. Martin and Sharon Vaughn because I liked how it looked at the simple view of reading. Word recognition times language comprehension equals reading comprehension. You're very familiar with this, but this is what I liked for beginning teachers is a visual so that they would see, okay, pre-KK in tier 1, print concepts, and then phonological awareness, but including phonemic awareness would be emphasized in K1, but then a little bit more. And basic decoding and advanced decoding, we're just teaching it K through 4th grade, but we continue to add to it all the way through our schools. And the same with fluency. It is emphasized once you can read words, then we are going to continue it until you graduate. And even today, you're still working on automaticity. But can you see how this sometimes things that are simple that you can grasp might even be better than some that are more complex? So I just included those for you, and you're going to get the slides so you could utilize them. And then on language comprehension, we are going to continue to work on oral language, specifically vocabulary over 12 grades. And background knowledge is going to go across that time. And listening and reading comprehension. It's not a done and once and done. Okay, and I just threw in here their parallel one for writing because I liked it. Again, there's not too many frameworks for writing out there, but this one put it into transcription skills, handwriting, spelling, conventions, keyboarding, and translation skills, grammar, sentence structure, a writing process, as well as text structure. I like them. I could explain things and then expand on it with my university students. Okay, number 2, we're going to break down things that are complex into obtainable chunks. So let's just look at this in terms of what a teacher would need to know and what we might teach. When I thought about this from a university situation, I thought, well, you're going to have to break down content by selecting resources. And so, Stephanie, can you just open up just for a moment? I know that you have written out for different classes how they might look in the universities, and how do they access that?
I can put a link to our Center for Reading Science website where we have a collection of model syllabi. I'll also put a link to the Reading League Compass where there are even more examples. So
Now,
I'll put both of those in the chat.
we just talked to some professors who also have done this at their school. Do they have a place that maybe you're going to make it available to look at other universities?
Yeah, if anybody has any to add to this collection or contribute, I would be happy to collect those. I'll put my email address in the chat, and we're always looking for other samples to share. There's nothing like having a model for clarity.
Nothing like having a model. Absolutely. So we are going to choose the content and break it down. And one of the best sources that I have found is the IES practice guides, which are almost totally unknown to our educational population. And yet, the Institute of Educational Science has done beautiful reviews of research on topics you might want to teach, and textbooks. And there's some review of textbooks, but I haven't quite found the one that I adore yet. But we're still looking, aren't we, Stephanie? And demonstration videos make a huge difference in terms of teaching our teachers. We have a website with example demonstration that is available, but I believe there's many other sources, and I bet we have, Stephanie, somewhere a list of those sources.
We do on the same
Resources.
on the same tab that I'm putting in the chat. There are some sample videos, but the IES guide was actually created for teacher prep. There was a version of the foundational skills guide that
Right.
has a nice list of classroom videos that I can put in the chat as well.
So here's just a reminder of the IS practice guides, which I'm sure you're all familiar with. But almost every topic in literacy, this organization has looked into the research. And what they do is they have a topic, they have 1 or 2 a year. Then their staff brings in all the studies that have been done that would talk to that topic. Then they look at the research and decide, is it a keeper or not? And then from the ones that they believe are quality research, then they make up recommendations and support those. And what is fascinating is that if you look at them, you will find that they all include explicit instruction. So one of the foundational skills they suggest that our students, our aspiring teachers, should teach students to decode words, analyze word parts, and write and recognize words, and that they should teach them academic language. But then for each of these recommendations are excellent descriptions. So they're useful for us as professors, and they're useful to our students as teachers. Just to give you another example, so teaching academic content and literacy to English learners in elementary and middle school. Again, they highly recommend teach. And teaching kids to be good writers. So they emphasize teaching them the writing process, teaching them the underlying handwriting, spelling, sentence construction, typing, and word processing. So these are terrific examples. And when I meet someone who is like writing a paper for a university, I first say to them, well, have you looked at the parallel IES practice guide? Because you could use all their references to follow up on. Okay, and there's just another comprehension one, and one that came out recently on interventions, 4th through 9th grade. That's really brilliantly done. All right, so in terms of the content, we're breaking it down into obtainable pieces. And I said, oh, if I was going to be a professor now at a major university or a tiny university, but one that was dedicated training teachers, what kind of coursework would I have? And so I would be looking at the science of reading, the science of writing, and the science of instruction. So this would be just my vision, and that they would have a course on pedagogy. And probably if I was teaching, it'd be on explicit instruction. And they would have a course that in the science of reading would cover all of the word recognition skills and how to teach it, how to measure it, how to increase the probability of fluency. And we would have one on language comprehension that would do oral language, would do vocabulary, would do background knowledge, would do some research validated comprehension strategies. And then I would have, I think we are not doing enough in the area of writing. I would probably have a course that might have to be one course on writing, but it would cover transcription skills, your handwriting, your spelling, and along with translation skills, like writing, having your idea and writing good sentences, having an idea, writing good paragraphs. Yes. And then I'd have a practicum. And when I did that practicum, I would do it in one-on-one or small group, but I would have it be a scripted program in intervention. Now, I've written scripted programs, and there's a number of them that have been written for struggling readers with diagnostic tests to place them in the right place. But what I like about them is that as you teach it, you learn about the elements of the science of reading. And as you teach it, you learn about how to pick examples. You learn about how to convey the objective. You learn about how to go from demonstration to guided practice to checking for understanding. In other words, and I've had so many people tell me this, I learned to teach by teaching that scripted program. So, and then I would, of course, have a practicum in the classroom. Well, how about the design of instruction? So I want to teach them how to design lessons. And we already looked at the big picture, but that the lessons would be organized and focused. Well, so should mine as professor should be organized and focused. You come into that room and you know the routine for the classroom. You know that we're going to do some review, that we are going to establish the goal of the lesson, that we are going to have information that is research validated, that we are going to, during that period of time, say answers together. We're going to read together. We're going to work with partners. We're going to work with teams. So all of that excellent instruction is happening. So this is something that I just want to throw out to you because I've been working with principals on this and university teachers on this. it appears that one of the things that is done by principals, like I met many principals who require that their teachers write formal lesson plans for all of the lessons they teach. And one of them said, you got to turn it in on Friday so I can review it over the weekend and you can teach it next week. And when I ask profs, do you ever have them write plans? I almost always get, yes, I do. Yes, I do. But I think that we need a new vision. So see if what you think of this new vision is that there would be a continuum of lesson planning. And at one end, where we might have a scripted intervention program or a scripted program that is in tier 1. Now, why would I want, if we had a scripted intervention program that was well designed, met all the criteria of good instruction, and had opportunities to respond and had well organized sequences and strands, why would I want a teacher or a university student for each of the lessons to write a plan when they were given the plan? So instead of the word plan here, I'm using the word prepare. You'd read the script, you'd rehearse the script, you'd study the corrections, you would teach it with fidelity as it was designed, because it's probably a research validated program, and you'd constantly adjust the next lesson based on student performance or assessment data. So instead of plan, we're going with prepare. Now, across our country today, whether it is a primary program that teaches foundation skills and comprehension, or an intermediate program that teaches advanced word level reading and comprehension and fluency, we have more and more school districts that are purchasing tools for their teachers. And so what might I do there? Well, for those tier 1 curriculum materials that are published and purchased by a school district, again, I am not going to go with plan, but I'm going to go with prepare. So I would train teachers to use those tools. It would be like if I was training a physician and he's going to be a surgeon, she's going to be a surgeon. I have got to give them the best tools, the best scalpels, the best absolute, and that they know how to utilize them. And that's the truth here too, that they will have tools. And I always say to school districts, please do not have them just go to teachers pay teachers, then it's not sequenced, then it is not explicit enough. Please don't do that. Give them the tools. And I would have my students, after they have a good deal of knowledge, I'd have them determine the strands in the program. Maybe it is phonemic awareness, letter sound association, decoding single syllable words, decoding multisyllabic words, high frequency words, early fluency, advanced fluency. Okay, so they're going to figure out the strands. And then I'd have them take the strands and go through, at least through one teacher's manual, and list the skills taught in each strand. But when they're getting ready to teach a lesson, I would have them annotate the manual. Annotate the manual. Now that's what I'm training teachers to do. So they look at the lesson and maybe with their highlighter, they see, oh, up in the corner, there's the objective. Oh, highlight, highlight. I want to be certain to say that. Then they read the information given and say, ooh, not enough active participation. I could have asked them for a choral response here and here and here. And what would work really well here is have them think of the answer, have them share with their partner what the answer is, and then I call on them. So I needed to infuse more partners. So they are annotating, writing in. Now, some of them are utilizing Post-its because they think they might have to give up the teacher's manual. But they are definitely prepared. They've read it, they've annotated it, and they might add the objective or the student responses or increase the amount of practice or add corrections or how they're going to firm them up. So from little planning to a lot of prepare, and then the last one would be the rare situation where I have no materials that have good lessons that I can annotate and take to excellence. So I've got to, for example, a teacher said for the eclipse, okay, I'm going to have 2 lessons that day on eclipse, but I'm going to write the lessons. So I still need the objective. I need to go over background knowledge. I need to go over, but it was rare. And so there they had to plan. Don't you like this? I like the vision of it. What do you think, Stephanie?
Well, I love this, Anita. I think it's a huge shift for teacher preparation, but it is in keeping with the change that's happening in K-12 education, because if you're preparing teachers who are going to go out into a school district where they have high quality instructional materials, they need to be able to analyze the elements of effective instruction within the materials that are being used. We're moving away from the days of what you described, principals asking teachers to, dream up the lessons. So I think higher ed needs to think about making this kind of shift, but it's major. It's
It's
really
amazing.
major.
And it's, if I have one more principal say, I have high qualified teachers. They are really professionals. They are professional teachers. They can design their own lessons. They can write their own materials. This is simply not true. It would be like saying to actors, well, first you have to write the play, then you have to pick the characters who are going, or the actors for it, then you're going to have to practice it, and then you're going to have to deliver it. No, the actors get the play. And they have to figure out how to best deliver that play. But the truth is, there's still so much for the actor to do. I mean, they have the play, the script, and now they've got to bring their talent, their energy, their interpretation, their voice, their actions. And it's the same thing with a teacher. Oh my God, I have good materials, but I still have to bring my personality. I have to bring my perky pace. I have to bring my connection to the students. I have to bring, so there's so much to do. All right, so I've just tried this one out on you because we talked about it before, Stephanie, and I'm glad you think it's okay. Well, we want the teachers we're training to teach organized and focused lessons. And of course, we need to teach organized and focused lessons. Basically, this was the motto when I was at University of Oregon of our training program. How well you teach equals how well they learn. And I would like every teacher to come away with this big idea that the quality of my teaching is going to be directly related to the quality of their learning. And the lesson would have an opening and a body and a closing. And that would be true for a teacher utilizing a curriculum lesson, and they would have an opening, a body, and a closing to it. And that's the same with us. And we do know that it's useful to tell them the goal of the lesson, the purpose, and then also to review what has already been taught and what is necessary for this lesson. Now, that's true in college classes too, that there's certain knowledge necessary and that need to be reviewed. But here is a big idea. When I look in classes in elementary or middle school or high school and college classes, that most of the review is what we call a recap. Let me just go over everything that we talked about last week in terms of the big ideas. So last week we talked about, and what we need to do is move away from a recap to some kind of retrieval practice, where from memory our students have to retrieve information and they'll get feedback on it. So I've really worked to move to more retrieval, where we actively involve the students in the review and we use retrieval practice. Powerful Teaching is an excellent book to have in your repertoire because it is on retrieval practice. So not just recapping, but asking questions where they have to retrieve information in maybe written form or sharing with their partners. So this is one I recently did. I taught a sessions on vocabulary, and there were 3 long sessions on vocabulary. And the last one we came in, I said to them, you have 5 minutes, and you are going to write everything you've learned about vocabulary in connected discourse. And it could be information from the lectures, from the text you read, from the articles I gave you, from the demonstrations, from the webinars. And I timed them for 5 minutes. You have to try out the number of time. It was a little bit too long. But then I had them compare the draft with their partner. And so one partner said, well, this was my first big idea, that students arrive in school with very different vocabularies, with first graders ranging from having vocabulary of 5,000 words in their personal lexicon to 20,000 words, according to the studies that were done by Louisa Moats. And then the partner says, well, I have that too. So they underline it in their draft. And then that partner says, well, I wanted to remember here that we don't wait until intermediate grades to teach vocabulary. We start with read alouds and introduce vocabulary within that. Ooh, I don't have that idea. I'm going to add that note to my paper. And do we collect these and grade them? No. We're going to give tests on the information later. This is a way to practice and rehearse it and practice it by conveying it to our partners. That's just an example of we don't have to have things that significantly increase the challenge for our work. I hated grading long papers. You know what I finally did? I finally did only tests, midterm and finals, that were action, where they either had to give me a video of them teaching certain things, or we did simulations where they had to teach something to their peers, and we graded the quality of instruction. It was so much better than grading papers that just seemed to stack up. Maybe you've had that problem. Okay, and so I just included here the design of instruction when you want the students to do something. And you'll recognize these steps, that they would have demonstration first, and that we too might want to demonstrate, where we show them and tell them how to do it. We slightly exaggerate the steps. We have what? Clarity, clarity, clarity. And after we have demonstrated it, we move to we do it, not to you do it, which is most what teachers do. And I gave you an example. Now, when I teach, I actually model routines. So I say to them, you're my fifth graders, and I am going to use a routine to teach the meaning of a word, a routine that you could then utilize in your student teaching. You could utilize when you're teaching reading or you're teaching math or science or social studies when it comes to vocabulary. So I would actually model it live. But there's other ways to do it. Maybe I have had one year a really, really fine teacher, and they make a short video. Or I find another video for us to watch. But so many new teachers have told me, I never saw anybody teach. I never saw anybody teach. Well, they were in classes where someone presented, but not necessarily taught. So this is from a class I teach on explicit instruction where I modeled it. So I introduced the pronunciation, I introduced the meaning, I introduced examples to discern what it was, and then checked their understanding, and then expanded it to other words. But then we did in class a We Do It, where we taught one together. So again, I scripted it so that we could all do it together. Pronunciation, meaning, examples, checking understanding, and then having expansion of words. And then we had a third example, which was a You Do It, which they had one to teach their partner, and they taught another one. Well, you can't believe how if you practice this little bits of teaching in all of your classwork, how good they get because they see it, they're told what to do, they practice it, and it is transformative. It's sort of analogous to, those physicians who are practicing, utilizing their scalpel to make entrance into bodies that are dead. But it's the same thing when I talk to my physician friends, that they had a lot of demonstration, a lot of guided practice, and a lot of practice before they actually did surgery on someone. I said, thank God you had a lot of practice. Okay, so these are for partner practice. And again, the reason I scripted them out is so that we could do it in a really limited amount of time. All right, so the big idea here is they're going to use I do it, we do it, you do it as teachers when they're teaching how to do something. We are going to use it to teach them routines, particularly routines, little bits of instruction that they'll be so masterful for that they'll recognize it when they go to annotate. And if they ever have to form their own lesson, they can utilize that knowledge. Well, this is the one that I have really big concerns about. Tomorrow, I'm working with these principals, and 3 of their teachers have done videos that I'm going to train the principals on how to give feedback to their teachers on those teaching behaviors that the teacher uses that are useful in that moment and in the future. And then we're going to look at 1 or 2 or 3 improvements or grows that would be useful in this lesson and in the future. And when I looked at those videos for tomorrow, the major challenge that we had to work on was the delivery skills, the actual delivery of the instruction. And so one of them is that we would get frequent responses. And so the principals have learned how to take opportunities to respond data. And our teachers should be trained in taking data on opportunities to respond so they could look at their own videos and analyze their opportunities to respond. But we know it makes a difference. Very high effect size in the meta-analysis on opportunities to respond. And learning is not a spectator sport. I did a podcast with that title. And if you'll remind me, Stephanie, I will send that to them, the link. And this one of you said, oh, you spoke one time in California with Kevin Feldman. This one is a gift from Kevin. Everyone does everything. That we get rid of the raised hands in our elementary, middle school, and high school classes. That everybody writes it, everybody puts up their fingers for the correct response, everybody tells their partner, everybody reads it to themselves, then reads it with us. Everyone does everything. So just to remind you, frequent responses have excellent research. As the responses go up, so doth, yes, time on task. As the responses go up, so does academic achievement or learning. As the responses go up, disruptive behaviors go down. And we know that if you need to intensify intervention, one of the things you would do is increase the amount of time. And number two, you would increase the opportunities to respond. And so I'm going to send you a few articles that look at, so how many responses might we wish? And from these two meta-analysis, they concluded that really effective teachers, when the responses were very simple, had 3 to 5 opportunities to respond per minute. Not in the day, not in the period, not in the hour, but 3 to 5 in a minute. And even when it became more complex, like we shared with a partner or wrote something on a slate, we're still looking for 1 opportunity to respond per minute. And so these are the kind of things that teachers could do for opportunities. And I just highlighted some that, as I watch classroom teachers, are working very well. For example, I could have you say it together. I could have structured partners, not just turn and talk, but ones and twos. When I was in Hawaii, one classroom had rainbows and sunshine. Okay, rainbows tell your partner, sunshine tell your partner. The only problem is I couldn't bring it back to Oregon. No, that we could have teams. We could have short written responses. But one that has very good research on it is the use of holdups. Everybody holds up their whiteboard. Everybody holds up their hand signal for an answer. Everyone has a response card they hold up to show the answer. Why is it so high in terms of effect size? Well, because I can hold everybody accountable and everybody has to respond. And delivery, we'd also monitor. And that's what we have to do with our own students. We have to listen carefully when they make responses, look carefully at their work. And then if they were talking to a partner or writing something down, we're going to circulate. We're going to walk around, look around, talk around. And we also need to give feedback. And teachers really need to understand that feedback feeds forward. And so that they would have clear feedback, sometimes to the entire group, sometimes to individuals. And feedback does feed forward. And they would also have a brisk pace. And I'm always asked about this. What makes a brisk pace? Well, as soon as you have an answer, you move on and don't digress. So it's perky, it's not pokey. And we have practice. Now, just yesterday, I did a webinar on practice. And basically, we want just enough practice for you to move the information to permanent memory. whether it's with college students having enough practice or having children in our school site having enough practice. So I would, if I was a college prof today, I would practice critical skills within class sessions. I would also have the students practicing outside, often with scripts, so that they would get the essence of good instruction. And I would provide sessions with the instructor to even get better at that. And I'd have practicum where they tutored, preferably in a scripted program, and then a practicum where they were applying it in a classroom. You know, one thing that I would suggest, it's often hard to find like a perfect classroom teacher model. And I've sort of given up on that when I work with university profs and say instead, let's hone in on districts that have very good evidence-based core or intervention programs. Because then, even though we might not control everything about the teacher, we can control what they're going to have to practice. And so I know that, for example, a friend of mine, Marcy Stein, did that at University of Washington, Tacoma. And they found that then they could work on being certain that the students had practice annotating lessons within the curriculum, and the quality of their instruction went up, often modeling for the classroom teacher how they could utilize that core program. Well, this is the summary. And it's a summary for this is what I want my teachers to do when they have the blessing of teaching elementary, middle school, high school kids. This is what I want to do to constantly model what they need to do. Now, I am going to ask Stephanie, and you can also ask questions. But Stephanie, did we have any class questions that came in the chat?
I'm not seeing questions in the chat, but people might be ready to type some of those in or just unmute and add their questions.
All right, so I know that we covered quite a bit for an hour, but we did pretty well in terms of time.
It was a nice perky pace, Anita, for sure.
Was it nice, perky pace?
Yes, yes, I appreciate it.
Sometimes it's just useful to be reminded in one way what we need to be doing, because we all have these behaviors in our repertoire, but are we always using them with our own aspiring teachers? And I just think how much different our world in terms of reading and writing would be if all teachers had been trained in this way. Wow.
Mm.
Would that not be something? Okay, so I am going to move over here. And so that I can see everyone.
I want to just let everyone know that Larissa Phillips is recording for us, and we will post the recording and maybe the resources that have been in the chat so that everybody has those links, a record of those links. If that's possible, Larissa, we could post that with the recording. So that'll be on the readingscience.org website.
Well, so just raise your hand if you had a comment, so that we know that all of you are here. I see so many friends over time. Joanne, you have your hand raised. Open up, unmute.
I have unmuted, I think. I always ask the same questions. If you're at a university that at maximum is going to have 2 reading courses, how on earth do you split it up and still get in that necessary practice? I find myself skipping we do and things like that because I'm just trying to cram things in where things can't be crammed.
That is 2 courses does not make a competent teacher of literacy.
Can you pass
Um,
it on to a certain school?
And so that, so boy, you'd really have to hone in.
Mhm,
And so let's say you did one that was all on the word level part of the simple view of reading.
mhm,
Okay, so they had those skills.
mhm,
And then as you taught the second one on comprehension, of course, one of the best ways to increase comprehension is having students write in response to what they've read. So infusing that with the word level, you're going to infuse spelling and encoding. Within that, you're going to infuse morphographs, which then also can transfer to vocabulary. But that's sort of what I would do in that case. And then you're just going to have to model the good teaching skills that you know so well, Joanne, as you're teaching them and constantly telling them about the critical nature. Now, I know that Rhonda, who I'm working with on the Oregon Governor's Committee for Higher Education,
mhm.
you have over time added courses to your own training. And if you were in Joanne's shoes, what do you think you would do, Rhonda?
Rhonda there?
That's a great question. And I think what you said makes a lot of sense to sort of think about it in terms of Scarborough's rope. And
Mhm,
one course be more on the word recognition side and the other on the language comprehension. And I think what Anita talked about today is just brilliant in that if we don't have the space to have a course on explicit instruction, then it needs to be infused throughout that time. And you know, and I know that is huge in a lot of programs to not have more than 2 courses. Some have 1, and I don't know how they're getting to anything. Um, but I think that that structure makes the most sense to me. In an ideal world, you would have a separate writing at least, but
Mm.
you know, it infusing that as it kind of parallels makes sense to me too.
Thank you, Anita and Rhonda.
Yeah. So just raise your hand. I want to hear from some other people. I
Sue
mean,
in
I-
Australia has her hand up.
This is more of a comment than a question. This is my second year of teaching initial teacher education, and we have had a lot of pushback from students not wanting to participate in non-volunteers because we use picker sticks in our classes. And I just wanted to share a bit of a win I had yesterday in my first year language and literacy subject, because I have been, trying as much as possible to model all of these the ideas you've shared today. And I'd set up partner A, partner B, all of those kinds of things. And yesterday we had a whole lesson where they shared, they contributed, they offered feedback. These are students very shy, very unwilling to share their information. And they walked away saying, I actually know what I have to do to complete my assignment. So for me, it was just a real lesson to hold your nerve, keep doing it, keep being perky, keep being engaging, and they will follow you eventually. But it's been this is five weeks of sometimes I'll ask a question and it's crickets, like there's nothing. So so sorry to share my personal thing, but for a new teacher in this space who's used to young children who are so willing to go along with you, absolutely persevere with your young adults, because so far it's paying off.
Sue, we're so glad you didn't get crickets. That's a term we seldom use, but we've learned it again today. But isn't that the confidence? When I taught teachers, they would come back and say, I was confident. I knew on the first day what I had to do. And that is exactly what we'd want, because if you're confident and your outcomes are excellent, you want to stay in our profession. When I see people leaving it, it's because I just didn't know what to do. And it was too much work because I wasn't taught ways to do this in a routine manner that didn't take my whole life. So I compliment you. I love your country. I'm missing for almost 10 years, I spent a month usually in Queensland. And so I'll just have to come back again. Thank you so much, Sue. Does anybody else have their hand raised?
Renata has her hand up.
Hi, Dr. Archer. It's Renata from your group of Cohort 1.
Yes.
And I just had a comment. I mean, I just will have my first adjunct position with MSJ, but in my day job, and I had one of my coworkers join the session, there's so much. I work with principals every day. And so in terms of their learning, there's so much to take back to them. But as you share this, thinking about how we facilitate the learning of the principals and the assistant principals. So there's just so much to chew on and for us to sit down and think about, and there's in New York City, we have all this new curriculum rollout. So there's so much for us to unpack here. So thank you so much.
Yes, so Renata, I am working with a group of principals, and if you email me, I'll see if I can invite you into the training I'm doing with principals in New York City in one of the districts. But what I found was that principals also need to know how to look at curriculum so that they can figure out the strands and the skills, but they also need a lot of practice in looking for what makes a difference. Because what I found so often is the feedback that was given to principals or given to their teachers might be something like, boy, I love the fact that you have a wall here with pictures that illustrate what you're talking about. Well, I teach them to say, now, is that the major thing that's going to lead to learning? Maybe the major thing to learning is that they read material with the students and ask them text-dependent questions, which would be totally generalizable. Or we go into a class and the teacher has very few responses, but twice asked for everybody to say an answer and they all participated. So then go with that. So it's sort of, it's a whole art form to watch instruction and to know what makes a difference and then to honor your teachers when they've done that. But we don't train principals to do it. So you, archerteach@aol.com, and I will ask the superintendent of the district I'm going to if you could join us.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
You could sit in the front with me. Okay, anybody else raising their hands? Don't you feel blessed by just being a part of this group?
I
mean,
certainly do.
Wow, I mean, it's focused on what's going to make a difference and how we might do it and helping each other out. We are at the pinnacle and we cannot continue to have just the myths and the beliefs lead us. We must have the best research so that we can become a profession. Like when you go to your dentist, you know that they are up to date on what to do. When you go to your physician, you know that they are professionals, that they don't go by thought, just by what feels good, but they've really researched it. And that is what we need to be as professionals. And that's what we need our teachers to be as they are out in the field with that level of expertise that people look at and praise them and appreciate expertise. Well, Bobby, you didn't have anything that you wanted to ask. You put your glasses down twice, so I thought maybe that was a signal.
No, I'm just thinking. I've seen you so many times And, I'm so glad to be here. I do work at a high university, Eastern, at a regional campus. I've done a lot already with the science of reading because my real job is in the classroom. I'm a literacy coach. And so I work in an actual building with teachers.
Lucky
And
you.
so I take it all back and forth with me. And I was going to ask Stephanie, have you heard anything about Ohio moving towards a course on science of reading required by their Ohio University, Ohio colleges? We kind of heard that gossip going around that there were going to be a course coming out or a required course that colleges were going to be asked to teach.
I haven't heard that, but I know that there is an evaluation happening right now of
Okay.
the teacher training programs in Ohio. So I wouldn't be surprised if something came out after that that would be directed at the knowledge building for faculty.
Thank you.
It's good to see you, Bobby Joe.
Bye.
Okay, you can put your glasses back on, Bobby Joe. There you go. Okay.
So
All
on that topic, I'll mention that there are 3 opportunities that I know of for university faculty to increase their knowledge and skills related to the kinds of things that Anita's been talking about. One is through the National Institute for Direct Instruction. Marcy Stein, who Anita just referred to a minute ago, is the instructor for that course. It is directed at university professors
It's through
to-
Nifty.
through NIFTY. I'm partnering with them to offer it this spring using Doug Carnine's text direct instruction reading. So professors will have a chance to learn from Marcy and Diane Kinder using the direct instruction reading text, but build your course or revise your course based on your new learning as you go through this 9-week series. We are
Wow.
full for the spring summer option, but we are taking a wait list for people because we'd like to offer it a second time in the fall. So that's one option.
Mhm.
There's also something brewing around using the new online training from CORE, which is called OLA, O-L and L-A, and I can't remember what those initials stand for exactly, but it's based around the CORE teaching source book. So same idea that we'll have a facilitated experience for people to expand their knowledge of the science of reading, but especially if you want to use the core source book in your courses, then this virtual learning experience would allow you to build or revise your course as you're expanding your learning. Oh, thank you. Online Language and Learning Academy is, yep, that's OLA.
And how about, I'm just reviewing the materials by AIM,
Yes.
and they have one that is for teachers and for principals and for professors.
So they do have one for professors.
I believe so.
Excellent.
Well, so we have many places to become enlightened.
Which a year ago we had zilch. So this is progress. And we need you to create one, Anita. You've
You know,
done it
here-
tonight. You've
Here's what I promise is that I have been working on revising my intervention programs, which took all of my attention for the last 5 years.
absolutely.
Now have made the decision to do some revisions to explicit instruction and have invited Rhonda to join Charles and I in that revision, Rhonda Fritz. This is what I have promised. When I'm done with that, I'm going to make a free online course on explicit instruction.
Amazing.
And so it's sort of my last major thing that I do. I'll probably be 80. I think it'll take me from 80 to 82, but I'll still be alive. So that's a good thing. But I think that I'm committed to not making a profit, but rather making something that would be really useful to professors. So it'll be specifically for higher education.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Thank you for that, Anita. That's just an amazing gift. We can't wait for that. We know you have
Yeah.
other important projects in the
weekend.
pipeline.
That's right. We have a few beforehand coming up. Yeah.
We will wait patiently for
Yes.
that one. Yeah. But this was a great start tonight, and we're so grateful for the time that you've spent and the knowledge that you've given us, just really expanding our thinking, all of us, about how to use these elements of explicit instruction in our college courses. So thank you,
And you
thank you,
know,
thank
I
you.
really would like feedback on the idea of having graduated planning, where you have a scripted program and you just prepare, you have a core program, you annotate in preparation, and occasionally you write a lesson.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that idea. Somebody asked in the chat for examples. So I think as a group and as a community, we will look for those examples. If anyone has one, please send it along, and we'll develop those. We'll create those, try it out in our courses, and then share with each other.
So I am for that one that I asked our New York, Renata.
Yes.
So I am using one of their adopted ones in New York to teach annotation.
Oh, great.
That's all you need. And then we'll get some examples because we're going to be working on that with those principles.
Excellent. So I will reach out to Renata for that example after she gets to attend your session with those principles. Wonderful.
All right. Well, here it is. And it's almost 5:30 here. It's almost 8:30 there. You've been so gracious. I can't even imagine what time it is in Australia, Sue. But it was a total delight. And Stephanie, thank you for inviting me. It was the gift of my week. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Anita. You are always a gift to us. We really appreciate your time today. And thanks to everybody who was able to be here with us. Many, many thanks.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody.